Hi, I'm Paula Januszkiewicz, or Paula J. Welcome to another Secure Hacks weekly episode. Today we're going to be talking about ransomware, pretty popular subject. Well, before we start our episode, there was a little story behind it. This was at our customer site. One of our customers called me almost crying, and because I was doing a pen test before over there, I knew a couple of people working in this company, and he was like, do you know this lady named Veronique? And I was like, yes, and I can tell you guys that this is the lady that literally clicks on everything that moves. So she's very social and very active, and what she did, she's got an email, by the way, being a #1 vehicle for ransomware, where there was a message saying that if she wants to listen to the voice message, she should click on the link that's going to take her to a Dropbox. Who really sends voice messages through Dropbox? But apparently she was interested in that, so she clicked on that link, and she eventually got ransomware. This was one of the variants of CryptoPrevent, and not only her disk was encrypted, but also the file server, because she was managing documents for traders. So quite a sad story, especially because they got this message in the morning when everybody came to work. So quite a serious situation. So lesson learned, what we need to do is to first of all learn what are the techniques used by ransomware, and as long as we understand them, we'll be able to protect ourselves. Protection is not very easy because really depends, unfortunately, on our budget, but even though our company doesn't have a high budget to spend on the prevention technologies, then we can still do a couple of things to make prevention to be effective in our organization. In today's episode, I will be showing you how ransomware works, because our team wrote one, obviously not to earn money, but to teach our customers how that kind of piece of code works. And later on, I will show you a couple of interesting techniques which you can use in your company in order to prevent it if you want to implement something right now. Of course, we will also mention the solutions that are globally on the enterprise level working, but I want you to understand at the end of this episode how and what kind of techniques ransomware uses. Okay, so let's dive in. Okay, so you should see my screen right now, and this is an email that user got from someone at whitehouse.gov. Well, it's a typical phishing, so we will discuss and start talking about ransomware from that point. So, well, someone gets the details, and this is a transaction receipt because you have just received $100. Just a scenario, just an example. So when user, let's go to downloads, will get some information about what kind of this transaction receipt is, this is what user sees. Of course, we all work in IT, and we can easily spot that this type of that particular file, it's an application, but because in Windows by default we have extensions being hidden, user literally has no chance to differentiate in between if this is a real PDF or it is an application. So what I want to show you, it's of course ransomware. And this is the ransomware that we wrote for educational purpose. Don't get me wrong, we don't earn any money on that, so you will just see a sample. But this is a situation where users' data will be actually encrypted. So let me get to the desktop here, where I've got some documents, and I got here secure text file. It's just a regular text document, and there's like a URL to the quiz if you didn't take it yet, so go ahead. Well, but besides that, you can see that this is just a clear text. So that's good, because when the user will, simply speaking, open up this transaction receipt, this is an information that user gets. Of course, that doesn't have to appear over here. Yeah, so it depends on the policies, it depends on if the user pays attention to this, because user just wants to open a PDF. So user will say run, because I want to open a PDF, and indeed this is a PDF that opens, but additionally there is a ransomware. So what happened in the back is that this particular document get encrypted. So as you see, it's right now in an encrypted form. And effectively, well, we will need to pay a ransom. So this is how ransomware can get into the enterprise. And at that certain point, of course, we could be wondering, what was wrong over here? Well, first of all, and this is one of the cases that we should definitely pay attention to, is the configuration of the extensions in Windows. As I already mentioned, by default, they are hidden. So why don't we, for example, make them show and learn users to recognize malicious extensions? Yes, of course, it can be a little bit challenging process, but if you implement security awareness trainings, this could be one of the interesting projects to do. Second thing that is worth paying attention here is that that particular pdf.exe, it was possible to execute it just like that. Well, that's the point. With our team, we've been talking for the past couple of years that implementing code execution prevention, it's a crucial step for security within the enterprises, but surprisingly, I can tell you that a lot of cases that we see, they didn't even started the project. So this is quite disturbing, because code execution prevention is the #1 prevention for that kind of situations. Not to mention antivirus, because here antivirus will not really help us, because this is a piece of code that nobody knows. So this is like a #1 thing to pay attention to implement a solution, which is code execution prevention. Now, what I would like to show you is a solution like this. Of course, in Windows, we've got AppLocker, but AppLocker is available only in the Enterprise Edition, which for some of the companies might be just not reachable. So for that, we've got either third-party solutions, or we can, for example, try to implement software restriction policies in a good way. Yeah, so this is a pretty old solution, but when implemented well, it can do a pretty good job. The general idea here is to focus on whitelisting rather than blacklisting, because we don't want to skip anything that ransomware could potentially overuse. So we will just by default say that we would like to deny everything, and then on the top of that we will enable certain types of cases. Okay, before we move on, and I will show you the solution, let me clean ransomware here a little bit so that we are able to work with it later in different cases. So I will just close all the stuff over here, and we have also decryptor for the files, so I'm gonna decrypt them so that we are able to encrypt them again. So let's do it. And our docs right now. Here, as you see, this is again a text file. Okay, so let me switch to a different machine. So I'm right now on a different machine when we're going to test all the possible solutions that we could implement besides the enterprise solutions. So AppLocker, of course, we could cover it in a different video, no problem, but I would like to make some useful video for everybody else that doesn't have AppLocker available. So software restriction policies, it's something that we got in Windows, but before we get there, I got a little thing for you. So there is a tool that is called CryptoPrevent, and that particular tool, you can download it from a certain, well, it's as you see, it's not signed, but okay, let's have a look at it, because it's worth to become familiar at least with the interesting software restriction policies rules that they offer. Yes, so this is from Foolish IT. Well, maybe not a very positive name of the website, but okay, yeah, let's move forward. And if we go to advanced, show more options, here we've got different types of options which we can use in order to prevent execution from the certain known locations. So these are the statistically the mostly used locations for malware to execute. Is this tool free? Well, this tool is free, but if you want to have maintenance, you have to pay. So of course, I'm sincerely saying we're having no interest in it. It's just an interesting piece of code. So what we're going to do, we're going to apply the protection. So let's do it, and let's find out if our in this case pdf.exe, so the transaction receipt, as you can see, I've got these copies on the desktop here. if they're going to execute, and if yes, then under what conditions. So I'm applying the protection right now. I'm using the default but pretty good settings. For example, one of the things that will be prevented is to execute executable from the user's profile, so from app data folder. So in order to apply it, we need to restart a PC. In my case, it is actually quite fast. So we're gonna do it. Yes, so let's restart this particular machine. And in the moment, we will be ready to move on. So we are back. Here we go. So I will log on as one of the users. And let's see if the prevention was applied. So we should have a message about successful application. Very good. Prevention successfully applied. Great. And for now we can try. Yeah? So transaction receipt.pdf. Of course it's a pdf.exe, so you've got a sound also and a message that this is not allowed because it's prevented by the administrator. So this is software restriction policies type of message. Okay, so that kind of makes sense. Question is it possible for me if I rename it, let's say? Yeah, so we've got transaction receipt.exe to execute it, and as you see, I am able to execute it, so that's not very good. On the other hand, it was blocked from the roaming or app data in general roaming, so the user's profile folders. So let's find out if this is blocked. So normally what we see over here, this is again transaction receipt.exe, because amongst the rules it's in general denied to execute anything that has pdf.exe in the name, so that's not too bad. But if it's just an exe, then if we execute it from the desktop, you see it was possible. So let's see if the blocking works also from the user's profile. So let's do it, and as you see, I'm blocked. Okay, but the question is, how many levels down here are supported by the solution? So I'm going to create a folder named 1, and then I will try to execute it again. Well, it didn't work. Let's do it one more time. And let's move it over here, and as you see, it opens. So the solution is not perfect, but it is actually pretty good for from the statistics perspective, like taking into consideration how malware works. These are the rules, and this is the approach that works over here. So of course, if we will be writing right now our own ransomware, we will take this into consideration, and we're going to write up the software that will maybe go and execute on the third level down here in the user's profile. So of course these solutions can be bypassed because we are blacklisting things, not whitelisting things. Okay, so knowing that this approach, it's okay, yes, but is there anything that we can do better? Sure, absolutely, and let's do it. But before we move on, what I will quickly do, I will at that stage disable the protection. So advanced options, under protection, here we go, and then we will reboot, which is a very quick operation. And after that, what I will do, I will show you how to configure software restriction policies, and if it of course makes sense. So we will also leverage over here a very interesting solution where we will apply the blacklisting approach, where we will deny everything, and on the top of that we will allow certain things to execute. So things from Windows folder, things from program files, so kind of normal locations for regular software to execute from. Okay, so we are almost ready, but we need to get to the policy. So secpol.msc, and we've got here software restriction policies, right click, new software restriction policies, and security levels, where we specify that we want to disallow everything, set as default. That's great. So for now, anything that I try to execute, let's see, we've got the sound and the message that because it was blocked. Well, in this case it was blocked because of the interesting two reasons. One reason is that because this particular software, it's running from program files 32-bit, which let me tell you something interesting about that in a moment. And second is because this is an LNK file, which is just a shortcut. So if we go into Software Restriction Policies node and we go to the designated file types, one of the things that is blocked is LNK. So let's remove it from the list. Okay, apply. So at that stage, let's try, and again it's blocked again, and that is because of the 32-bit. So if we go to additional rules, let me maybe enlarge it over here. We've got here program files directory path rule. So I will quickly create a similar rule by copying what is over here. So new path rule, and specifying that anything that is in this case program files 86 x86 is allowed to run. So this is the third rule, and let's see. And as you see right now, we have no message that we are not allowed to run software because shortcut was okay and 32-bit folder was okay. So we have just enabled LNK files, but is this a safe behavior? And the answer to this question is not really. And let me switch for that to another machine. So right now I'm on the other machine, and this is another type of phishing where user got an email saying that, well, there is this transaction receipt.doc, so you can probably guess that there's going to be some macro in it. Absolutely. But I want to show you this macro in a very interesting form, because if we double click on the Word document, we've got our protected view. Okay, enable editing. This is a security warning. And then there's this juicy text warning: in order to open this document, click enable content. Well, of course, this is something that if you do not work in IT and if you do not have a security awareness in your mind and in your heart, then people are just clicking on enable content. But in this particular macro, what I've got is a very interesting piece of code. Have a look. So we are downloading the encrypt.bin from mypaypalservices.com. Why not? And over here we are taking this file and we are renaming it to an LNK file. And that's kind of strange, because how could we expect that LNK file would be something that's going to execute? Well, that's the whole point. Even though we could, for example, block all the executables, and as you remember, we have enabled LNKs, in this particular case, it can be a bit deadly for us. Let me show you. But before we do it, what is important for us is to see two things. First, docs. So this text file is still a text file, so it's not encrypted, and it's going to be encrypted. Second, I'm going to run procmon here. So let's do it. So we got it, and it starts monitoring pretty much immediately. A couple of things that I don't need over here that can make a little bit of a mess, so explorer.exe, svc host, and so on. So I will exclude all those things, absolutely. And let's leave well, a couple of processes that I could be interested in. Okay, so having this running, let's just run this macro. So enable content. Okay, so what happened right now is that over here, if we go to our docs, our document is encrypted. So secure text file, if we open it, you can see that this is encrypted. And what happened then? Yes, so we've got procmon to tell us. And this is quite interesting. I will stop the monitoring. So what we will be searching here for, we could be going over here and then file summary, for example, by folder, and we could check who and what was being written into different types of folders. Yes, so we're able to check, like for example here at Freddy's, in this particular case, desktop. Yes, so my file, it was encrypted, and in the docs, yes, I've got different types of. I've got the secure text file encrypted. And I can see that this is the file that we've got written to, yes? So question is, what was happening? I can, of course, filter by this, by double-clicking, and I can see over here, and that's very interesting, that this is a PowerShell script that was doing something, and that's weird. If we go to the properties of the PowerShell process, and if we go to the process, we can see one of the, actually my favorite techniques to execute the code remotely, or if you are afraid that there will be a situation where all the special characters will not be processed properly and so on, PowerShell encoded command is the case. So we are executing over here base 64 code. So I'm going to copy that, and for now in PowerShell, PowerShell IC, why not? We can do that. I will at that stage, and I got this little script over here, I am able to decode, of course, what was in that base 64 code. So let me actually put that over here. I got already that code over here, but let me show you everything from the beginning so that it's all nice and clear. So I'm going to copy that, and then basically let's enlarge it a little bit. And this is something that we're going to, simply speaking, paste over here. Yeah, so this is the stuff. Yep, and let's find out what that is. So let's decode it. So this is in a PowerShell written little base 64 decoder. Yeah, so very useful. Maybe you're going to use it for something. This is how I do it, for example. So let's execute it. So it's going to be just line number 1. And what we see over here is our ransomware, but being written in the PowerShell. So this is something that is the future. It can be running as a user, and it's allowed to run because it's a PowerShell. So what should we think about when we are implementing a successful prevention against ransomware? Are 3, I would say, the most important things. Of course, there is much more, but if we should pick 3, yes, then what these gonna be? First, disable macros. Especially in Office 2016, Microsoft offers a set of policies which allow us to block the macros. So that's good. Of course, it's not everything, because it could be also JS, so JavaScript file, but this at least limits the scope of the attack. Second thing, of course, is to implement in general code execution prevention. So of any kind, yes, whatever that's going to be, to prevent running different kinds of executables. And the third thing to pay attention to, the most important one, is within that code execution prevention, have a special look, pay special attention to all these files that look innocent, like for example PowerShell, or like command prompt and so on, or in general scripts, yes, that are allowed to run, that users should not be able to run them unless they have to do something specific. And not to mention things like security awareness, or being all the time up to date, and implementing the good firewall rules that prevent outgoing traffic from the machine, so that only certain applications, certain executables are allowed to communicate with the internal network, most of them I guess, but to the outside, to the internet, only a couple of those. So these are the principles for ransomware prevention. But unfortunately, reality is a little bit sad. Based on what we see during our penetration tests, is that a lot of companies are not ready, but they definitely start to think about these kind of solutions to be implemented. So I hope this little video convinced you a little bit about what to do with ransomware. At the super end, I got a little things for you, a little geeky option. So what we will do is to implement something that is actually quite funny from the implementation perspective. It's gonna be a little geeky thing that can prevent ransomware a little bit. So let me start the console as an administrator, and I'm gonna move here to Freddy's users and of course Freddy's desktop. And I will implement something that our team was thinking about. We were thinking like, is there any geeky option in Windows that we could use to make ransomware to not execute proper, not work properly? Yes, but don't get me wrong, it's more like a cherry on a dessert instead of having this as a professional solution, but have a look. So I will create over here folder. Let's name it ## loop. And let's get into it. And I will create over here a symbolic link, so mclink. And let's do t, and it's going to be named 0, and it's going to be pointing to the loop. And I will do the same, but it's going to be just another one with a name now, 1. If we do dir a and then s and then b, yes, then what you can see is that it's looping. Well, the reason why I use hash 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 is because it's from the beginning of the ASCII table, and this is quite interesting because you might be wondering, okay, but how long does it take for that particular ransomware to be looping here? Well, first of all, if I open the transaction receipt that we know from before, well, the PDF opens. It takes some time, yes, but our ransomware will not go through. Why? Because it takes a long time. Now, if we have a look into how many levels, how many iterations we've got over here, we've got approximately, taking the maximal link length into the consideration, we've got approximately 60 levels to jump to. So that means that we've got 2 to the power of 60 iterations. Therefore, and that's why we are naming the links with the 1 characters to make a lot of iterations, because what matters here is an amount of levels here. So effectively, when we wonder how many levels, how many folders we go per second, yes, assuming that we've got 1000 folders being read in a second, then we need 2 to the power of 50 seconds to go through the whole structure that I'm displaying over here. By the way, I will stop it because the view is horrible. And effectively, that means that if a year it's 2 to the power of 28 seconds, you need for that 2 to the power of 22 years. So that's 4 million years. So ransomware will have something to do on your computer. Sooner or later, you will notice that because of the input-output operations that are very expensive, the CPU time, it's definitely spent on that. So this is like a little geeky thing that you can check out in your infrastructure if you have nothing implemented right now. Of course, this might be something that you need to test with your antivirus solution. It might be necessary to exclude it, but this is something that you need to test by yourself. So what we have learned right now are the different kinds of options that are important from the ransomware perspective. Okay guys, so that's it. I hope you like it, and I'm really curious in your ransomware stories. If you had any situations like this, or you know someone that had situations like this, make sure that you will post that into the comment section below. I will be responding to that because I really want organizations to stop being vulnerable to ransomware, which is such a simple solution. And to prevent it, it's also not very difficult. So I'm keeping the fingers crossed for organizations to stay on the safe side. And see you next week.